Good evening. Welcome to the latest episode of the Pandemic Podcast. Tonight, I have something slightly different by popular request from our audience. We're going to be addressing the question, how to create your own economic freedom. We're going to be discussing the opportunities that the cryptocurrency provides. We're going to look at how blockchain can potentially transform and decentralize much of the world as we know it, because we've been manipulated and lied to for decades by the central bankers and the elites, the 1%, so to speak. And the rise of cryptocurrency has, however, provided an attack or at least a challenge on central government, central banks, money printing, inflation cycles, and fraud and corruption. And whilst doing this, offering the opportunity for us to create our own economy and our own financial freedom. Now, the enigmatic creator of Bitcoin, Satoshi Nakamoto, the world's most renowned currency, Bitcoin, said that it was designed to eliminate redundant middlemen and central banks. The intent was to thwart corrupting influences and break down centralized power structures to put the money back in the hands of the people. Tonight, we'll be exploring whether that's possible or whether governments will attempt to regulate or even ban cryptocurrencies. Will national digital coins emerge? What role could they play as a threat to civil liberties going forward? And can cryptocurrency really transform the financial system and ultimately fulfill the intent laid out by Nakamoto as a way to place the power back in the hands of the people? These are the questions we'll be addressing tonight with our special guest, Jim Duffy, who is one of the UK's leading crypto experts, who recently launched the Crypto Standard podcast with co-host Jordan Walker to take the cryptic out of crypto and make cryptocurrency more understandable and more relatable. So if you want to explore how to create your own wealth with cryptocurrency but don't know where to start, then this is the episode for you. So tune in and please share this episode. I'm really excited. As a student tonight, I'm looking forward to learning more myself about cryptocurrency and how we can take advantage of the opportunities that it offers. Jim, welcome to the Pandemic Podcast.
Hi there, how are you?
I'm very well, and how are you doing?
I'm very good. I've been podcasting all day, so today's my shut out the world. Got my mic on. I'm all about crypto, and then tomorrow I'll go for a walk.
Oh, fantastic. Well, yeah, I'm glad we have the opportunity to have on our schedule as well today. Jim, would you mind just, this is a fascinating subject, but would you try to share a little bit about your own background prior to the entering in the world of crypto?
So I've done a lot of things throughout my career, and I guess latterly I was involved in helping entrepreneurs. And it was a scheme called Entrepreneurial Spark, and we worked with some big banks, NatWest notably, who were fantastic to work with, I have to say. And we helped them. We grew that business throughout the UK and some in India, and then eventually NatWest took it over, which was fabulous. So I've worked with entrepreneurs. I did 11 years as a police officer. Oh God, I remember that.
Yeah.
And I owned a pub, so lots of different things. And I guess that's a little bit like whereas some people go into a career and maybe they stay there for 30 years, I like to change every 2 or 3 years and learn new skills and move on to different groups of people.
Excellent. And then, so what piqued your interest in cryptocurrency, and when did that happen?
Around about 2017, I could see something happening, and I spoke to my brother-in-law, Al Walker, and at the time, things like Coinbase, which was a wallet, a kind of exchange, it took you like 2.5 weeks to get on to them. But I sat with him and I started to chat this thing over, and then I thought to myself, I'm going to find out more, and I did my research. And this is a great moment right at the beginning of this pod to say, this is not financial advice. It's not financial advice. I don't have any post-nominals that say I am Jim Duffy, PhD in financial advising. This is just me educating you and giving you information. And what I would encourage your listeners to do after this is go and find out about it. It's one of the most fascinating areas of study, and it's so relevant to where we are now in this pandemic.
Absolutely, Jim. And like many of us going from the unknown to the known, what were your initial steps? You got your Coinbase account set up. What was your process of learning initially, just for context?
So, like the majority, I would say the large majority of people that enter cryptocurrency, you go in with your eyes wide shut. So I could see in 2017, I could see Bitcoin rising, I could see Ethereum rising, I could see Litecoin rising, and I thought, I'm going to have some of this. So I eventually got my £1,000 into Coinbase and bought some Ethereum, bought some Litecoin, and within a month I was like, whoa, this is great, I've doubled my money. And I was showing people my wallet, look at this, I've doubled my money, thought I was Bertie Big Cigar, and then boom, it all went horribly wrong, and Bitcoin and the whole cryptocurrency market crashed. And it was round about that time, between 2017, 18. That's when I really started to read and learn. And they call that the bear market, which is, so we're kind of in a bull market just now where everyone's really positive and frothy and frenzied and excited about the amount of money and capital moving into the cryptocurrency markets. But at that time, it was very quiet. There was hardly any financial plumbing. There was things like Coinbase, but now there's tons of wallets and exchanges you can use. So during that time, it was a good time to get my head down and start learning all about cryptocurrency. And I made some big mistakes. And I was lucky at the right time just to be in the right space.
Thank you, Jim. We'll break down some of these terms later on around wallets and exchange, what that all means. I know a lot of people are just learning about crypto for the first time, and we'll even take the steps to define blockchain and cryptocurrency. But before we do that, I'd like to actually look at some of the conditions that have led to the development of blockchain and cryptocurrency. Namely, we said in the introduction about how we've been manipulated by central banks and the elites for years. We've had the problems of monetary inflation, money printing, these cycles of corruption. What actually led, do you think, to this development of this technology type?
So it goes back. It goes way back in history. It goes back to the Romans, and then the Spanish had a go, and the Portuguese had a go. Everybody has had a go at being the kind of reserve currency of the world. Right now, it's the USA. But if you go back to 1971, when Richard Nixon took us off the gold standard. Now, what that means for your listeners is at that time, $1 was backed by a certain amount of gold, right? So, do you remember? Have you seen the movie Goldfinger?
Yes, yes, not for a while.
Yes. Right, so the old James Bond movie, and at that time, Goldfinger was this enigmatic character that he just loved gold. He had the gold-plated car, but at the time, it was all about how Goldfinger was going to break into Fort Knox, and Fort Knox is where America stored all its gold. So gold was a big thing. But then what happened was Nixon took them off the gold standard. They came on the TV on a Sunday night and said, we're coming off the gold standard. And at that time, America ostensibly defaulted on its debt because it said no longer is one of our dollars going to be backed by an amount of gold. It's going to be backed by the trust that you put in me and you. So we're going to trust each other. You're going to trust this government. And that trust is what's going to back the currency that you have in your hand. And it was at that moment that politicians, central bankers, and the elite were able to pull the mask over everyone's face and say, ha, 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 right? Forget gold. We're now going to be in charge of the economy and the economics. I bet I think you told me you studied economics, did you?
I did, yes, way back in 2005. Yeah.
Yeah, so all the economists, right? So they were basically, they just took a position, and Maynard Keynes, they take a position, and all of a sudden a politician will say, right, that's the one we need to go for. Let's go for that. And what's happened is they've all been blown out the water and shown to be so wrong. So that took place. 1971, come off the gold standard. The dollar then becomes the king, which means the USA is the king, and its hegemonic power, the power of America and the American dollar, just takes over the world. And then what happens is oil comes along. Oil, lots of oil. And then America thinks, well, hold on a minute, we'll just trade oil in dollars, so we'll call it the petrodollar. So it holds that. So therefore, what happened is, as a result, because if you think about it, every country had their gold. But when America took them off the gold standard and said, well, actually, we don't care about how much gold you've got because it's all about the dollar, it became the daddy in the whole show. And that was part of the problem at the time. You then move that on, And you have the global financial crisis of 2007, 2009. Everybody remembers that one, where in the UK, Royal Bank of Scotland or NatWest at the time went down. And it had to go down. I mean, the debt it was holding in places all over the world, South America, in America, where it had mortgage-backed securities, all that sort of stuff, all these financial derivatives. That was all money to make bankers, financiers rich. So they all made lots of money off that, whereas everybody else then had to pay for it. So Royal Bank of Scotland or NatWest is still 55% owned by the British taxpayer. Because at the time, the Chancellor, wasn't Gordon Brown was the Prime Minister. I can see him, the guy with the big bushy eyelashes. Anyway, Alistair Darling, they were very good because they said, well, if we don't do this, the money taps are going to switch off. So they bought it and they just took on all the debt. So what happened is, anytime there's a problem financially in the world, the central banks come along and they take on the debt, and then their balance sheets rise and rise and rise. If I was to tell you that in the last 18 months to 2 years, America has printed more money than it did in the last 40 years.
Yes,
think about that.
It's mad.
Now, and let's just think about the term printing money. It's not as if when Jerome Powell, just now they're talking about a 3.2 trillion stimulus on top of that, the 8 trillion that was done during the time of Donald Trump. It's not as if Jerome Powell goes downstairs to the basement with all these bankers, right, and have a glass of port from the lovely port reserve they've got, and then starts bringing up all this money. They just go to a computer and they add zeros. Think about that. Now, where was did they tell you that at economics?
No, not the simple terms like that, no.
The central banker in America at the Fed, they just go and they add zeros to the debt, devaluing the currency. So it gets thinner. If you pour some orange squash, right? You pour some orange squash, that much, and it's really thick, and as soon as you add all that water, it thins and thins and thins and thins and thins. At some point, if the jug's big enough, you cannot taste the juice. Yes. And that's exactly what has happened to our money since 1971.
Wow. I listened to one of your podcasts today on the Crypto Standard, where you talk about fiat currency being a Ponzi scheme. What do you mean by that?
Well, that's exactly what I've just explained. So if you look at the amount of money that's in the world and all the taxes that we pay, we think we're paying our taxes, everything should be okay. But what happens is economies run out of money, and the one that has shone the light on it is the pandemic, and therefore they have to print more. So they print more and they say, there you go, everything's good. So we'll put all that money into the market. The stock market in America is the highest it's ever been. During a pandemic, it's the highest it's ever been. It should be on its ass right now. And all that money goes into the system and floors it all up. So everyone thinks, oh, that's really great. We're doing great. And woe betide any president of the United States who lets the stock market go down. So instead of turning around and saying, well, Joe Biden, I tell you what, Trump got that wrong. Here's what we should do. We should just say, look, we should be honest with the people and tell them we don't have any money. No. But they print and generate more to keep the good feeling and the goodwill out there. And therefore, that is the ultimate Ponzi scheme. Because at no point is it ever going to shut off. Its money printer goes brrr, and that's what's happening in the current, and that's globally. That's happening globally as well.
Yes. So then, what then becomes the role of cryptocurrency and blockchain? And perhaps we should define these two terms just for clarity's sake.
So if you look at if you consider Great British pounds, yen, the euro, and the dollar as soft money. So they're soft money, and we've just demonstrated that they can be printed at the whim of a central banker and a politician who agree to do it. So that's soft. The hard money is money that's wired in mathematics and code. Okay, so you come out the economics class, you go down the hall to the maths class, and in the maths class, the mathematicians tell you you're not allowed to do that because the formula says you're not, and the what do you call it? What was talking about there? The other guy. The
Friedman.
economics guy. The economics guy says, no, but we've
Yeah.
got to do it. We need to do it. The
Yeah.
mathematician says, no, I'm sorry, you can't do that because the code says you can't. And not only that, the code is burned into this blockchain. So therefore, the money that we have is immutable, and it's built on maths and code, and it's governed by a proof of stake or a proof of work, and it has an energy around it. And that is the new money. So that's hard money. And that's where cryptocurrency comes in. It's hard. And don't believe when people say, oh, it's all about fraud and people can use it. Yes, it can be used that. But who've the biggest fraudsters? Who's had the biggest fines for financial fraud ever? JP Morgan, the biggest bank in the USA, fiddling gold and silver. They've been fined. RBS or NatWest just get fined for allowing $364 million or pounds or so to come into the bank without checking where it came from. And if that was you or I, and you were putting money in, they'd be on it fast. But the big global players seem to be able to outfox them. So, but with cryptocurrency, everything is on the blockchain, and when it's on there, no one can go in and tamper with it. So at no point can Jerome Powell at the Fed go in there and add a zero and just say, tell you what, let's print $1 trillion, because it's totally impossible and mathematically impossible to do. And that's where the term hard money and soft money comes from.
So then what are the consequences then for the monetary system as we know it, the financial system? Is this going to disrupt fiat currency? Are we going to see a transition towards digital currencies full stop? The prospect of central banks creating their own digital currencies?
So they will, because they've got to do something. Because right now, Christine Lagarde at the EMF, Jerome Powell, and our own Bank of England governor, right now they are shitting themselves because they're thinking, oh my goodness. Remember the bit in the Wizard of Oz when the Wizard of Oz was, I am the wizard. that was the financial system as we knew it. And then what happened was, as it Toto goes up and pulls the curtain, and then you see someone operating it, looking, thinking, oh no, I've been caught. And that's exactly what's happened right now. They've all been caught. And what they're doing is they're terrified because they'll lose their power, and they'll lose their big fancy cars and their chauffeurs and their fancy 5-star hotels and everything else that goes with it. And what will happen is people will then move to becoming their own bank or taking control of their own finances. So you've got the central bank, then you've got all the different investment banks, then you come down to the retail banks. All those levels of banking, people are taking margin and cut, and as a result of that, we're sitting here in the middle of an inflation pandemic. This is just starting. So if the pandemic started 18 months ago, the inflation pandemic is just about to start, and they call it transitory. How could it be transitory when my gas bills, so my gas and electricity bills have gone up 5% or something, and then I just got another notice in telling me they're going to go up in April.
Right.
So where's it? So at what point do they say, I tell you what, it's coming back down, Jim? It's not. This is just going to go on and on and on. Used cars are more expensive than new cars just now.
It's crazy.
That's absolutely crazy. Property prices are rocketing. They're up 25% in the USA, 20 odd percent in Canada. You look at the property prices in the UK just now, and everyone thinks, oh, I'm doing great in property. But actually, it's just inflation, because the money in your bank account and everything else is just being deflated as a result of that.
No, absolutely. I've experienced it firsthand here, renovating our house. Building supplies just week on week going up and up. My parents happen to be doing the same thing again in their home, and just unbelievable. We're seeing the real inflation.
I cannot get a builder, so I live in Dundee. I cannot get a builder. I cannot get a painter. I'm struggling to even find an electrician or something, because they are booked out for months in advance. I'm like, wow. Where did all that come from? Because people are staying in their homes. They think they're doing well, and they're do them up. Probably there's a bit of pandemic cabin fever where they've looked at things and say, well, I need to do it up. But right now where we are, from the painter to the used car, the new car, right the way through to all the different things that we thought were normal and that everyone had under control. So there's actually more chaos. If you think about all the all the containers that are sitting off the port in California. Wow. If you think about companies like Costco, who are now hiring their own ships, they're hiring their own container ships, and then they're going to take them into ports like Boston and New York, which don't have the clog up, and then transport them so that we get our goods for Christmas. All that we thought was normal, and all that we thought that all these people had under control, we've now found out they didn't have under control. And what a great opportunity for us as individuals to to use this and reimagine and re-engineer our thinking. And that can come from us. But if I look at the young guy that I work with, Jordan Walker, they're Gen Z. These Gen Zers who are interested in the environment and all that sort of stuff, they're looking at all this and they're not daft. And I think that's where the energy will come from over the next 5 to 10 years in terms of changing the financial system.
Indeed, and you've mentioned this kind of pandemic of inflation. What's been the impact of the pandemic on cryptocurrency? Have we seen, has there been a rush of people joining the market over this period of time? What's been the kind of overall impact?
So my friend Chris has. You'd love to. He's listening today. Chris is fantastic. He's a mathematician. I think he did a degree in maths and then a master's in statistics. He's one of these kind of guys. And I remember it was March 2020 and the pandemic really hit. And at that time, stock markets crashed throughout the world. And even Bitcoin went from, I think it went from $10,000 down to like $3,500. Everyone said it was finished. And at that time, we were like, oh, that's really interesting. That's a big old reset. And Trump then started printing money, and they call it stimulus. The beauty of it is now, I'll get sidetracked here, so bring me back. They use fabulous terms like stimulus and quantitative easing, right? Instead of just saying money printing or increasing the debt burdens in the society. Hey, you Gen Z, we're going to print all this money and create all this debt so that when you're 40 or 50, you're not going to be paying 20 pence tax in the pound. You're going to be paying 75 to pay for it all. Yeah. So at that time, the stimulus and all kicked in. And the beauty of it is, so America was printing stimulus checks and sending people checks. They called them stymies. Where's my stymie check? And they were increasing people by about, I think it was $600 a week when you were unemployed. So people were sitting thinking, hold on a minute, I've got all this extra money. Where am I going to put it? And then what happened was they found cryptocurrency. So they had more time in their hands. And they weren't out working. In the UK, the amount of people that were at home with furlough, and they had nothing else to do. So all of a sudden, cryptocurrency came up. And in terms of virality, when people start to talk about things and word of mouth comes about, and then they start watching podcasts and they find out, oh my goodness, the country is going down the stank. What should I invest in? And at that time, I sat with Chris and we started to seriously, I'd been in cryptocurrency, but seriously look at it and what was happening. What different blockchains were, because there's not just one blockchain, how to invest in it, what terms like leverage and stop loss and margin and spot and all that sort of thing meant. So we went down the rabbit hole of Bitcoin and money. And from then, the last 18 months, and I know I talked to this earlier about, that's when I've done my PhD in macroeconomics to realise what the financial system in the world is really all about, and how cryptocurrency, probably for your listeners, over the next 3 years, the window of the next 3 years, if they were to educate themselves, find out more, do their own research, and get involved in putting money in cryptocurrency, they could. So I'll preface it this way: I am going to make a fortune. They could make some money.
Wow, that's absolutely, and absolutely. We put the disclaimer at the front end. Your own performance is down to you. But let's talk in very simple terms then. First and foremost, some people are literally just coming across cryptocurrency for the first time and hearing all these terms, cryptocurrency, blockchain, in very simple terms. Can you define what a cryptocurrency is? Define blockchain and describe the differences for people.
Okay, I'll give that a go. So if you think about, So a blockchain is essentially, it's digital energy. So it's all online. It's all on the internet. So when they talk about Bitcoin and coins, there's no such thing as a coin. You can't buy a Bitcoin or a Cardano coin. They're pieces of code that are generated in Bitcoin's case every 10 minutes or so. So every 10 minutes or so, a block is generated and mined, and it all forms as part of this big chain. And at no point can anyone go in and fanny about with that chain. You can't go in and say, I tell you, well, let's go back to 2017 and put that transaction in. It's immutable. It's impossible. And within that, there are all those different transactions. And those different transactions, the block is mined, and the miner gets a fee for doing it. So they look after the system. And within that, it's cheap, it's cheerful, and financial transactions can take place. And that's what terrifies the banks. Because right now I can go into my banking app and I say, please pay Amazon while I buy that. And the bank says, I will allow you, Dan, to take money from your account, and I will allow you to pay Amazon, right? So they're allowing you to do that. It's your money. But on the blockchain, if you've got your piece of cryptocurrency on the blockchain, you're in charge. You're in charge of that. It's no one owns it. It's decentralized. So, if you think things like Cardano and Bitcoin, they're decentralized. They're run from all over the world. They have nodes. So if you remember the internet was set up with just the different computers talking to each other. Well, this is the next level of the internet, and it's 10 times, 100 times more secure, and it's based on cryptography, which is just absolutely solid. It comes back to maths. Everything's coming back to maths. All the philosophers and social scientists are blown out the water here. It's all coming back to the geeks that sat at the back of the class and did maths. They're now going to they've now created some of the most amazing technology that's going to empower us. So you've got your blockchain. And like Bitcoin, is added to every 10 minutes. A new block is generated, and that will continue to happen. And within that proof of work generates a value. And if I buy a Bitcoin, or if I buy a fraction of a Bitcoin, that with my address, and I use £100, it's on there, and no one can ever take that away. The government can't take that from me. No government can take. They can try, but I've got it, and because Bitcoin it is the daddy, it is the king, because it's so decentralized, they will try and regulate it. They will not ban it. China's basically, because it's so autocratic, it's like banned it. And what's happened is the people who were mining the Bitcoin every 10 minutes there, they've just relocated to other areas in the world. You've got places like Miami wants to be the Bitcoin capital of America. You've got Texas wants to be the Bitcoin mining capital. You've got Kazakhstan. They will go anywhere, and that is the absolute beauty of the blockchain.
Jim, before we come to crypto, because I know some people are thinking, what's he talking about mining? In their head, they're managing a drill somewhere in Miami, the capital of mining. Could you define what that, just in simple terms, what that actually means? What is that?
Yeah, so let's use gold as an example. So at any time throughout history, gold is mined. So a miner will go down, there'll be energy expelled, they'll go down, they'll drill, they'll do what they need to do, and then they're mining for that gold. The gold's brought up, it's all cleaned up and polished off, but let's call that a nugget. So your little gold nugget is sitting there. That's been mined, and there's been energy to produce that thing of value. Okay? With Bitcoin, the miners are digital. So they use ASICs, and this is where the lots of electricity comes into the equation. So they're very powerful computers and ASICs that have to work out complex problems every 10 minutes. So there's an adjustment difficulty within that, and they compete with each other in terms of. So it's not just a case of you set these things up and all of a sudden you become a Bitcoin millionaire because you've got all these different Bitcoin rewards because you're mining. So they've got to work hard to get it. And then what happens is they get, when they mint a block on the blockchain, they currently get 6.25 Bitcoin for doing that.
Mm.
Right? So they get, that's their reward, their proof of work.
Yes.
And that's why Bitcoin mining is so popular. So they then get that. And then in 4 years' time, that then, I think it was May 2020 was the first halving. So every 4 years, the miners' rewards gets halved. So they call it the Bitcoin halvening. So the last one was in May 2020, where they were getting 12 Bitcoin, or roughly 12 and a half, and then it goes down to 6.25. And then in 4 years' time, that'll go down even more. And that is where the scarcity of Bitcoin as a store of value comes in. Does that help you?
It does. So I've got a couple of questions on that then. So firstly, this is all obviously made possible by the fact that we live in a digital world now. But what if there was a digital collapse? Quote unquote, the internet went down. What impact would that have? Would that massively disrupt the market?
Never going to happen. So the internet might go down in one geography, the internet might go down in one country, but the chances or the probabilities of the whole internet going down, humanity would be dead. It would be an all-out nuclear war, because at some point, somewhere, where it's in some island, there's going to be internet. So as long as there's one node, there will be Bitcoin.
Now, the other piece then is around the miners. It sounds very process intensive, which sounds like it needs a lot of machinery and equipment. So we've been talking about how this is empowering for people, but surely then those who already have the assets to invest in computers and heavy mining equipment, is this just being bought up by the same elites that this is, potentially taking the power from? Are they just finding another way to find power in this equation?
So the elites aren't onto it just yet, which is great, but unfortunately they're coming in. Yes, you're going to have, so in order to generate a block in Bitcoin, someone has to make an investment of their time and their money. There's electricity to pay for, and then they get their 6.25 Bitcoin. They either hold that for the future when Bitcoin goes up in value, or costs. Now, 21 million Bitcoin is all ever going to be. These people are only chipping away at the surface of that. The way to think about Bitcoin is, even though there's 21 million, it goes out to 8 decimal places. So instead of thinking about, and this is really interesting just now, as Bitcoin sits over $63,000 or $64,000, it reached an all-time high this week. I would say to your audience, don't think about buying a Bitcoin. It's too expensive. Think about buying a piece of a Bitcoin. So £100 worth of Bitcoin, and break that down into Satoshis. So even though a Bitcoin, they talk about one Bitcoin or one Great British Pound, we have 100 pennies. You have got 0.00081 Satoshis. So think about Satoshis, and what will happen in the future is people will trade in Satoshis. And that's what will happen in places like El Salvador.
Interesting. So, you can't print money within this system, but surely as more people enter the market, you still have that. I love the analogy of the orange squash. Surely as more people enter the market, that will eventually devalue the individual currency within cryptocurrency.
It can't, because there's a finite amount. There's only a finite amount. And because it's so right now, we don't know how much gold has been mined at any one time in the world. They can kind of work it out, and there's an inflationary piece to it. We don't really know. But with Bitcoin, it's mathematically there. You can go on and you can go into Etherscan or these different things that with blockchain, and you can actually watch blocks being mined. You can see the transactions. It's completely transparent. And that's the absolute beauty of it. So even though the beauty of it is there is only 21 million, so I know that if I buy, let's say a member of the audience buys £100 worth of Bitcoin, for example, if that's the blockchain they decide to buy, I know that no central banker can issue another 21 million. I tell you what, 21 million is not enough. Let's do another 21 million. because that means that my £100 has gone to £50.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that's what they've been doing with money printing. But with blockchain, no one can do that.
Indeed. So then, what determines the value of the currency? Obviously, you see the Bitcoin rising. What is it that then determines the value?
It's the same in any market. It just becomes the same in any market. There's those who want it and what are you prepared to pay for it, and there's those who are selling it and what am I prepared to sell it for. And if they believe that it's going up, some people might not sell, therefore it's going to go up more. And also, so there's that. So there's this supply and demand in terms of market economics and things, but there's also the halvings. So the scarcity, as I said, every 4 years. And then what's happening is big companies, institutions, pension schemes, family offices, and now countries are now moving into Bitcoin. So therefore, the price of it will go up, the value of it will go up. But as the value goes up, remember, the number of Bitcoins will only ever be 21 million. So if you hold your £100 worth for 10 years and you go through another 2 halvings, there's a jolly good chance that that's going to be worth one heck of a lot more. I mean, we spoke to a guy today who's forecasting a Bitcoin to be worth $2 million, a 45 trillion market in the future.
Wow.
This guy's really clever. He's talking to the Canadian government. He had 40 odd Canadian MPs. Now, Canada did what the UK did. It sold all its gold. Canada has got no gold. There's nothing propping up Canada except thin air. And that's the same as the UK because the gold was all sold. So what we're saying, look at it this way. Let's take the state and the individual because they're both intertwined but separate. So if you take the state and you say you have got your current account and your savings account. So the current account is the fiat money. In the UK, it's Great British pounds. So we used to call it pounds, shillings and pence. So you've got your pounds, shillings and pence, and you can buy cars, you can go to Sainsbury, you can transact with your bank via the app and all that stuff, right? But that's being deflated. We know that's being deflated. We can see that and it's just about to get worse with inflation. So then on the side of that, you have your savings account. And the savings account is Bitcoin, right? That's the one that cannot be inflated. That's the one that cannot be, I was going to swear there. That's the one that can't be, that's the one that can't be just ruined by the elites, right? So it's pristine. There's a guy called Michael Saylor. I would ask anyone who's serious, go and Google Michael Saylor is the CEO of MicroStrategy. His videos, his talks, and his understanding of Bitcoin is phenomenal. And he calls it's pristine. It's pristine technology and pristine money. And that is the savings account. So if I was sitting in front of Rishi Sunak right now, I would say, tell you what, mate, you're skint, you know you're skint, you can obfuscate, kid is on, come up with fancy slogans, all the rest of it about what you're going to do. Yes, and you've already started taxing us because you can. Why don't you, instead of borrowing money for this, that, and the next thing, borrow, what's 50 billion, right, mate? What's 50 billion, Rishi? Because you borrowed 86 billion for the pandemic and more. Why don't we just call it 50 billion, borrow that, stick it into your savings account and buy Bitcoin. Buy Bitcoin. And in 10 years, that will be the sovereign wealth fund of the UK. I would say it to the First Minister of Scotland as well. So don't worry, Rishi. I know all your pals are bankers, and I know that they've all got lots of money tied up in Goldman Sachs and all the rest of it, and they're really worried about their bonuses. Hey, don't upset the apple cart. But the apple cart's going to topple in the next 4 to 10 years anyway, because fiat cannot go on printing money. So if in tandem with that, if you have your savings account and you've put all that money in Bitcoin and it's a hard money, then you're basically hedging and you're giving yourself the option and let people's mindsets go into, here, I can use both of these moving forward and there'll be one winner. But what you haven't done is you haven't said, right, the economy's screwed, we're off the pound and we're going to Bitcoin overnight because it collapses. But over a period of a decade, you can get people's mindset into understanding what hard money is and the soft money. They operate together, and at one point, people will gravitate towards the other. But you, as a country, Mr. Sunak, you're going to go down in the annals of history as the first chancellor that didn't borrow but made money for the government. How about that?
Yeah, I mean, fascinating. I mean, I suppose the concern around governments getting involved is with the advent of central digital currencies. The digital pound, for instance. What would be? You're in the dark there, Jim. You just lost your lighting.
No. There we go.
There we are. What would be the consequences on the crypto market, firstly, of that happening? And then I have some follow-on questions to go from there.
What was the question? I missed that because I was moving my satellite.
Sorry, yeah. So what would the impact of, inevitably central digital currencies, national digital currencies, the British digital pound, for instance, what impact would that have on the market as a whole? And would that see people gravitating? Would people have the same kind of certainty and trust that, the illusion of trust, at least, that we see in the financial system? Would the same then be replicated? Would people start moving assets to central currencies? What's your view on this?
You've just answered the question. It's the illusion of trust. It's the Wizard of Oz again. So think back. There's a Wizard of Oz. Oh my God, it looks all powerful. And then what the Wizard of Oz is doing now is, the Wizard of Oz is saying, I tell you what, I'm going to change that to something else and make it all seem okay, because we need to stay in control. So a digital bank currency saying, what it's going to do is it's going to make sure that Christine Lagarde knows exactly how much you've got in your account. So right now, the relationship between me and my banks is between that money in there is between me and them and nobody else. And they have got a fiduciary duty to ensure my privacy and the custody of my cash. As soon as you go to a digital bank central currency, they know how much you've got. They know how much you've got. And they can say to the taxman, by the way, he's got far too much money. Or have a look at what's in his or her account. That's even worse. They're going to sell this as if it's empowering and it's phenomenal. And look at us keeping up with the Joneses. We're keeping up with Cardano and that sort of stuff. That is going to be 1984, George Orwell.
Totally.
The worst,
Yes.
worst that could hit. And so,
not just knowing how much you have, but what you're spending it on.
And they can direct what you spend it on. They can direct what you spend it on, which is even worse. You've frozen.
The trackable. Indeed, absolutely. Yeah, that becomes an even bigger problem.
You need to repeat that. You froze there for about 30 seconds.
Sorry, yeah. So you said that not only track what you spend, but also can almost determine what you spend your money on if they create programmable currencies. For a lot of people in this kind of emerging kind of digital surveillance state that we've seen off the back of the pandemic, that's a major concern. So that illusion of trust, I think I'm sure they would look at some serious incentives though to try and persuade, because again, it's if you're going to launch a national digital currency, there's going to have to be some sort of incentivization for people to take up the offer.
Yeah, with incentivization, there'll be carrot and stick. So the stick is, if you don't do it, we're just going to freeze your accounts. Just now, we'll freeze your bank account until you do. And the carrot will be, well, if you think about it, if they want to stimulate the economy, and part of the reasoning behind these central bank digital currencies is this. Currently, if you want to stimulate the economy, you do it and it creates a quintillion effect. So the money comes out. I tell you what, there's a 3.7 trillion in stimulus over in the USA. That only probably about 20% of that actually hits people's pockets who need it, who are in actually dire financial straits. It goes through their pals and their chums in the banks at these big banks. So they get to control how we get it, and then they drip feed it. So think about it. The current interest rate in the United Kingdom just now is 0.25%, isn't it? Yeah, if you go for a mortgage or you go for a loan, they're asking you for 10 times that. You've frozen again
So
on my screen.
I've lost your connection. Are you with me?
I'm with you and I can hear you, but you were frozen on my screen.
Okay, the reverse happened my side, so we may need to repeat that segment.
What was it?
Well, you know what?
So essentially, can you hear me? Because you're frozen again.
So what can individuals do to mitigate? Yeah.
So what will happen is, so don't get me wrong, instead of the money going into the hands of the rich and powerful and then feeding its way down once they've all taken their cut, what the digital bank, this currency could stick £2,000 in Dan Gregory's account. So there you go. We're cutting out the middleman. We'll put the £2,000 in your account. But Dan, that comes with a caveat. We need you to spend right now. We'd like you to spend money on the following products. Go out, you must buy yourself a TV. You must buy yourself a Sonos system, and you must shop at Sainsbury because we need to get their profits up. And that's the danger with that, and that they can direct how you spend. It's not as if they're going to give you £2,000 and say, just you save that. They want you to spend it. They need you to spend it to stimulate the economy. That's just their way of saying, we'll put more stimulus in your pocket, but ultimately it will come with control.
Yes. Wow. Okay. So that's fascinating. So in the context of this conversation, how do individuals create their own economic freedom in cryptocurrency in the face of this? You know, and how do people approach it? Because the question I get asked all the time is, you know, should I be chasing the next Bitcoin? You know, looking for the next big thing. You know, how does someone approach the idea of investing in cryptocurrency?
Okay, let me answer the first part of your question first. The first part is how do you become that sovereign individual? How do you create generational wealth for yourself? In order to do that, let's look at El Salvador. So the government of El Salvador have gone ahead and created a standard where Bitcoin and US dollars are currency. They're both a legally accepted currency. And then what they did was they created the Shivo wallet and they put £30, which is probably a lot of money for someone in El Salvador, into people's Shivo wallet. So there's your £30 worth of Bitcoin in that wallet. You can't touch it for 5 years because we know, or we believe in 5 years that £30 is going to be worth a lot more. But they've created so that as a government, they have borrowed, and I think they've bought over 700 Bitcoin and they continue to buy. They're actually up on where they are just now. Wow. And in the individuals, so they've given, instead of saying there's money, there's pounds, or there's dollars, which is going to devalue, right? Because we can see that with the money printing. We're going to give you Bitcoin, and that Bitcoin is yours. And what will happen is with the Lightning Network, which is going to be a phenomenally fast, super cheap way to conduct financial transactions using Bitcoin, with Jack Mallers, that's all getting up and running. And in the future, they'll be able to transact with each other using the Bitcoin that they've got. And then the country will be able to borrow against its Bitcoin. And that's how they can do it on a country basis. How we can do it, the second part of your question, is go out there, do your research, work out what blockchains or cryptocurrencies that you want to buy. And then from there, make some investments. And when you make those investments, hold them on an exchange and in a wallet, and we can talk that one through.
Yes, please. I just lost you there for a second, but I think your connection was absolutely fine. So I think the audience would have heard your piece, but probably lost my video. So yeah, let's talk about that then, that next step.
Yeah. So if you want to buy a digital currency, there's lots of ways to do it. One of the simplest ways to do it just now is actually via PayPal. And there's another banking app. I think I've got it here. Revolut. So if you download Revolut or you download PayPal, most people have got a PayPal account. They are now offering crypto, offering Bitcoin and Ethereum, and Revolut's got a load of other ones that you can actually go on there and buy. That's really simple. The issue is with there, you don't own them, they do. So even though these companies are making it easier, or if I go on and I buy one Ethereum at £3,000 or whatever just now, that Ethereum is sitting with them. At no point am I allowed to take that Ethereum and move it off into my private wallet. So that's the downside there.
Right. So
but it's an easy way if you want. It's an easy way if you want to buy crypto.
Yes.
The alternative is to download go onto an exchange like crypto.com. So crypto.com, very decent exchange, really easy to use. You download the app. When you go into the app, it will say, hi, that's you, downloaded, all the rest of it. Then what it does is it wants to take a photograph of you. Don't be afraid. Let it take the photograph. Right? So it'll do a scan, it scans your face and all. It's phenomenal technology. And then it says, right, let's see your passport or your driving license. So that's good. So it wants to know who you are. So there's no money laundering. Right? And it's doing all its know your customer checks, KYC. And then it'll take that and it'll match them both up. It'll maybe look for a proof of address, just exactly the same as a bank would do. So let's say who you are. Then it'll want to link to a bank account. Where is the bank account? Is it in the UK? Is it Pucker? And from there, it'll go away and do some checks. And then it'll come back to you probably within 24 hours and say, that's you, you're hooked up and you're verified. We know who you are. And we know that if there's any dodgy dealing going on or where your money comes from. So if you think about it, they open that up and all of a sudden you stick £50,000 in it. They'll be like, hold on a minute, where did that come from? But now they know. So just like a bank, they can freeze your account. So you're on there. You then go to your all the different cryptos you can buy. By that time, you've done your homework. So you've not gone on blind, even though things like Bitcoin and Ethereum, Cardano, Polkadot are really easy to buy and they're in the top 10 and they're probably as safe as anything out there. You then deposit your first amount of money. So you either use a credit card, a debit card, or which you've already hooked up with your bank account or your PayPal account, and you stick in £100. So then you'll see £100 is in your account, and you can then go on and buy whatever cryptocurrency you want. So let's say you buy some Ethereum. You buy it, and it'll tell you, congratulations, you own 0.001 Ethereum. So you've got it on there. And right away, that will either go up or down. The next day, it'll go up or down because the markets go up and down all the time. So your £100, if you bought Ethereum yesterday, your £100 could be 125. Next week, it could be 180. The week after that, it could be 110 because the markets are going to move up and down. So you have to be able to deal with that volatility when you get into cryptocurrency. So if you're buying to think, I'm just going to make a quick profit, wrong. You're buying that to hold for 3 to 6 months, probably 3 to 6 months in this current bull run if you were buying Ethereum, for example. But you signed up for the exchange and you've bought your first crypto, right? Welcome to it. What you've got to do now then is you've got to move that off there and you've got to get that into your wallet because that money is on the exchange. And if the exchange gets hacked, or anything happens for whatever reason, let's say that the UK says, and it's happened right now, so if a couple of my banks won't let me deal with Coinbase. They won't let me buy cryptocurrency from certain exchanges because they're not happy with them. But right now I can still use crypto.com. So if that happens, you're like, oh my goodness. So you want to get your money off of there and into a wallet. So you could use the crypto.com wallet. Again, that's an app. Coinbase wallet. Now, these are hot wallets. So these are wallets that are actually on the internet, but no one can get into them because when you download the wallet, you get a 12 or a 24 word seed phrase. So it's like a separate app. Let's use the Coinbase wallet, for example. You go in there, you download the app for that, then you sign up to it, and it will give you this seed phrase that you'll write down. If you can memorize it, phenomenal. But that's your seed phrase, and you've got a password, and then you've got two-factor authentication. I'll come into that. That seed phrase, together with your password, together with your two-factor authentication via Google, makes that pretty damn secure.
Mm.
And what it means is, if anything happens anywhere, that £100 of Ethereum that you bought is in that wallet. It's yours. That's yours. You can keep that until you're on your deathbed. You can trade it. You can give it to someone. You can buy stuff with it in the future, but that becomes yours. You can move. So let's say I'm going to use a wild example that someone's got £500,000 worth of cryptocurrency in their wallet, and the United Kingdom comes out and says, "That's it. We've had enough. You're not going. Cryptocurrency is over. If you find out, we're going to do a China. No banks accepting it. No shops accepting it. Done. Move on." Well, that's easy. I can just jump on British Airways and I can fly to El Salvador with my wallet in my head, right? And I can go down there and I can just set up shop again. And El Salvador are actually going to make it so easy that there's no capital gains when I bring all that money into the country as well. That's what we talk about, the sovereign individual, and that's how you can be empowered to have you. So you can have that money in there and it's yours. And NatWest or Santander can't get their hands on it because that's your wallet. And it can get even more. You can go into cold storage where you get a ledger and you can put it on the ledger, which is like a little stick, and you can carry that stick around with you, or you can bury it. But at some point, that's then, we call that offline. So you've actually taken, let's say it was £1, you've taken it, and you've taken it off the exchange. So first of all, off the exchange into a wallet, and then boom, you've got it. So it's right off, it's right out the picture, and that's really secure. That's the sort of security that you should be talking about.
Well, so yeah, it is, but at the same time, if you forget your login details or you lose the physical object, are you then screwed? It's like if I lose my mobile phone and my digital banking app, I can just log back into my banking somewhere else. Does it work like that?
The key. So with being a sovereign individual comes accountability and responsibility. So what you have to do is that 12-word seed phrase, if you've got that, you can recover it from anywhere in the world. Mm-hmm. So you don't want to lose that. That's right. And that's where, that's the difference between being reliant, right, and being a big softy and say, "I forgot a password. Hello, is that the bank? And can you help me out? Blah blah blah." Right? That's lazy. And I understand that comes across as quite harsh and quite tough. But if you want to take responsibility for hard money, therefore, memorizing a password and a 12-word seed phrase is not a lot to ask.
No, you're right. Absolutely, it's certainly worth it. Now, the point I suppose most people are going to be looking to is, how do you determine what coins to buy? If people are looking for opportunities for growth, what factors? How do people make that market assessment?
Okay, so within the world of cryptocurrency, you've got to be very careful because it's still very unregulated. So if you look at one of the big investment firms in the UK, if you look at Van Eck or ProShares or any of these companies, Hargreaves Lansdown, they can sell you a product. They can say that product did 5% last year, 12% the year before, 4% the year before that, and they can give you a past performance on it. What they can't do is they can't say, "We reckon it's going to do 10% a year for the next 5 years." Right? So they're regulated, and that's really and quite rightly so. Cryptocurrency is not regulated, and what happens is you go into crypto Twitter or any of these different places where you start to find out about it. People will shill coins to you. So some people they call ETH heads. So they love Ethereum, right? They love Ethereum. Ethereum to them is just going to be the blockchain of the future. Some people are just Bitcoin maxis, and Bitcoin is it, and you shouldn't buy anything else. Some people will say Cardano is going to be the global financial platform that all the banks will build on in the future because its technology is so good and so fast and so scalable, so secure. Others will say it's got to be Polkadot, right the way through to Tezos, and then all the way down to all the little shit coins And that's part of the problem. There's over 2,000 coins to buy, or 2,000 different projects. There's SHIB. There's this thing called SHIB. And I actually bought some SHIB in May or something. I thought everyone's going to go crazy for SHIB. It's going to be the new Dogecoin. And I think about £250 in it. And within like 3 weeks, it was worth 100 quid. And I looked the other day, it's back up at 407 quid. I'm like, yeah, I'm up. So if you're buying for long-term generational wealth, I would say if you buy, if you're looking at the top 10 and maybe a few other ones, but you've got to do your research. I could sit here just now and I can tell you what's in my portfolio. I'm happy to do that, but I wouldn't recommend a coin. So I've got Bitcoin, I've got Ethereum, I've got Polkadot, I've got RSR, I've got Telcoin, I've got Cardano. So I've got all these things in different quantities to keep a diversified portfolio. And the other thing I would say is, yes, we are just at the beginning. So even though Bitcoin is at 60 odd $1,000, we are just at the beginning. This is just getting started. So for the listeners, don't worry, you have not missed the boat. I still maintain that between now and the next 3 years is when the majority of gains can be made. So if you're interested, you can obviously find out, come onto our podcast, the Crypto Standard podcast, and we run that on a Wednesday and a Saturday, and it's all about taking the cryptic out of crypto. And we don't make recommendations, but we do explore topics in a far deeper way. So go on to something like CoinGecko or CoinMarketCap. So that's CoinGecko, CoinMarketCap. Download them on your computer or an app, and from there you'll be able to see all the cryptocurrencies. So it's Bitcoin. It tells you Bitcoin, the ticker, how much it's worth, the circulating supply, how much the market's worth, what it's gone up in the last hour, the last day, the last 7 days, the last month, and then all the little charts where you can buy it. So from there you can link straight through to exchanges where you can buy it, and then it basically lists them all from 1 right the way through to 2,000. And different ones are coming on all the time. So there's one come on recently called Solana. I missed it. I'm like, where did that come from? But because of people are minting NFTs, and that's a different discussion, Dan. People are able to do it cheaply on Solana, and they're saying Solana could be the next Ethereum. Wow, that's amazing. Look at the growth it's got. But who's saying that? People that have got Solana are saying that.
Yes.
So it's,
well, that's where the market forces come in. And I think, when you've got this social media world of heavy, the influence that an influencer can have, if they've got a loud voice, not physically necessarily, but they have large reach, and they can early stage be market makers, surely.
Yeah, and you've got to watch. So Bitcoin can be manipulated. So if you look what happened with Elon Musk, so Elon Musk bought it, I think it was January, February this year, jumped up for $4,000 or something in an hour. It was phenomenal. But then Musk came out and basically said, look, that's not green enough for me right now. I do electric cars, so you can buy it, but I want it to be greener. And as a result of that, it's become greener. And the way they're mining it in places like Texas, they're using flare-offs and they're using excess redundant energy. So that's good, all that sort of stuff's going on. But if you think about Apple, so Apple could come out tomorrow and say they're creating a Bitcoin wallet or a crypto wallet, and all of a sudden it could go boom. Or Apple could come out tomorrow and say, we're not touching crypto, boom, the other way. So there's going to be ups and downs. And yes, media, or they call it FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt, that's always going to be around this. But if you stick to the maths, and you stick to the fact that in terms of global financial plumbing, banks, pension funds, family offices, Visa, all these companies are putting in place the mechanics, the financial mechanics for Bitcoin and for Ethereum, and for Cardano. So these things are being put in place just now. That's why I say it's just the start. Visa is already getting itself geared up Credit Suisse, JP Morgan are offering Bitcoin and crypto to the high net worth clients. I mean, it's just getting started. So that's why I think it's such an exciting time to be in it.
Absolutely. Jim, we've gone slightly over our normal hour, but do you have a few more minutes for just a couple more pieces?
Sure.
No pressure if you don't. No pressure if you don't. So there's this. So underpinning these coins is a technology type. You've made reference to a couple of things about how they work. It is part of the key to look at the underlying technology and its practical use cases in this emerging world, because are you effectively making bets on a technology type that underpin the actual coin?
Yes, and that's a great way to put it. So, as I said, my friend Chris, he contacted me way back in March 2020, and he went down the rabbit hole and he came up with Cardano. And we bought Cardano really early. I think we bought it at between 3 and 8 cents. I think it's over $2 now. It was phenomenal growth.
You text me about it, and I didn't do anything about it. I'm so gutted.
Right, okay, there you go.
I missed it. That's the start. Anyway. I missed the early growth.
You missed the start. You missed it, but it's still got to go. But the great thing about cryptocurrency is there's great competition. So the Ethereum developers are creating ETH 2.0, which is allegedly going to be more fast, more secure, more stable, can handle a lot more transactions. So banks and institutions are interested in that. Cardano has been meticulous and slow in building what it believes is going to be a future-proof blockchain that won't need lots of updates. Bitcoin's already there, decentralized, kind of the store of value, but even then it's not standing still because you've got Jack Mallers over at the Lightning Network and Strike trying to make it so that I'll be able to send you 100 Satoshis for the price of for 0.0005 pence, and I'll be able to send that. So that's all happening. So if you think about the growth of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency in South America, the reason it's there is Western Union, etc., are charging these people a fortune to send remittances from their families in the USA back to places like El Salvador. That'll become pennies when they do it in Bitcoin. So does that answer your question?
It does, yeah. Now, I know that I've become skeptical about so much of the world in the last 20 months, having run this podcast. And I know there's some skeptics in the audience about cryptocurrency. And, is it just, is it somehow, I know we've kind of addressed this, but just to ask, is it somehow just another ploy for those that have to extend what they have and have not to be excluded? Because there are some barriers to this. It's initially, the ease of market entry is there's lots to learn. It's not like I'm going to speculate on the pound, in foreign exchange. But even then, there's barriers. But is this somehow owned by the world's tech elite? And are they somehow going to come out as winners on this?
So this week, Bitcoin launched its first exchange traded fund, an ETF, on the American stock market. Now, it wasn't a spot. It wasn't a spot ETF, as in one. If you buy a Bitcoin on it, it's holding a Bitcoin. It's paper based. It's kind of garbage. But what it's done is it's professionalized Bitcoin. So from when Satoshi Nakamoto created it, right the way during the global financial crisis of 2009, right the way through to now, we've now got an ETF, and the spot ETF will come, which means that the Bitcoin will become even more secure. To answer your question, the money men, the Wall Street individuals and types and characters already smell the money. So they know that Bitcoin is coming. They know that Cardano and Ethereum are coming. And these things will all eventually be traded also on these big stock exchanges. The clever way to do it, so if you can afford to buy some cryptocurrency just now, do your research and buy it and hold it in a wallet. If governments, and I'm really passionate about the government of Scotland, which is skint. It's got no money. It relies on England, and it's skint. And many people in Scotland want independence, and if it does become independent, they're going to rely on Europe, which is skint. Right? So
yeah.
it comes back to the Rishi Sunak dilemma. Go out there. If a government like El Salvador has the pizzazz and the nous to say, I tell you what, we're going to buy Bitcoin as a government and put it in our savings account. Yeah, you can still have your checking account in dollars. And you guys, we're going to give you Bitcoin, right? And you hold that. And then we're together, the state and the individual are going to grow together with hard money over the next decade. That is the perfect blend. And I would challenge, let's see where we are in 5 years' time, Dan, in terms of what El Salvador, Panama, and others are doing and are going to do, versus where we are with the European and Westminster elites.
Yes, indeed. Now, the last question I have is, the practical application. It's obviously we've learned the merits as an investment vehicle, as an asset, effectively. But in terms of practical application, spending your cryptocurrency on goods, services, how prevalent is this, and how easy is it to spend your crypto once you own it?
So if you look at, we were sponsored by a young company called Zumo. And there's Igloo, there's crypto.com. So crypto.com will give you a credit card. So I have got my crypto.com account, and I've got my credit card with them, my debit card, and there's different types of different levels you can get. As soon as I go on that, I've deposited, I think it's £350. It pays my Netflix every month.
Nice.
So my Netflix, if I do a bit more, it plays my Netflix and my Spotify. So that's then, like everything else, bringing you in. That's the marketing. But from there, on my account, the day will come when they will offer direct debits and standing orders. That's coming. And when they do that, you don't need a bank, because you have your crypto wallet. So crypto.com, for example, I have got my crypto on it. I have got, at any time, I can change that into some pounds or yen or whatever currency I want. I've got my card. I can set up a payment to pay my gas bill. I can go out and buy a coffee at Costa. That is all coming, and it's coming sooner than you think. And that's what's scaring the banks. So when you see a bank like Revolut and PayPal all of a sudden thinking, we need to get into this, because PayPal is a payment system. And if they don't have crypto, they're going to make themselves obsolete. So they're already on it. And PayPal will start to offer banking services, and you'll be able to take out loans. That you'll have a one-stop shop on your crypto wallet within the next 2 to 3 years.
Wow. I mean, this conversation just gets me very, very fascinated. My New Year's resolution for the past 5 years has been to get my crypto game on, and I failed to do so for this time, and I can't leave it any longer. I'm sure many of the audience could sit. We've gone over the hour, but I'm sure everyone listening is thinking, "Oh gosh, I've got so many questions. I want to keep talking," and I feel that. But what I want to signpost people to hear more of Jim and the work that he's been doing. Jim is. What I know about Jim is he becomes he is looking for his PhD in crypto. He's researching day in, day out, absorbing an incredible amount of information, and to help digest that information, he's created the Crypto Standard podcast with a co-host, Jordan Walker. It's an incredible show. Would you just tell us a little bit about the show and how people can access it? What platforms it's on, because there's such a wealth of information within the content that you've created. I'd like to help direct people to that content.
So Jordan's a Gen Z, so he's a young guy. I'm a baby boomer, and normally a 22-year-old, a 23-year-old, and a 54-year-old have nothing really in common. It's kind of daddy-son relationship, even though he's my brother-in-law. But what fascinates us and what glues us together is the cryptocurrency and the potential to create generational wealth. So you've got the young and the old there. That's really good. We created the podcast, and it's taking the cryptic out of crypto. So today we've discussed a lot of stuff, and you could unpack different segments of this and go deeper and deeper, and create even more discussion on it. But we have about 30 minutes to an hour on a Wednesday and a Saturday. You can get it on Spotify, you can get it on Apple, Crypto Standard Podcast. It's two guys from Dundee in Scotland, part of the United Kingdom, and we just discuss in a very easy, straightforward manner what's going on in the markets, stuff we're seeing. We signpost things that we're seeing telegraphed ahead. We'll maybe discuss specific projects. We had the CEO of Reserve Protocol on recently. This weekend we have got Greg Foss. My Dan and Greg's are getting mixed up. Greg Foss is coming on the podcast. We recorded it today on Saturday. He will blow you away. So I know a bit about cryptocurrency. This guy is a machine in terms of his understanding of mathematics, arithmetic, code, Bitcoin, where it all fits in, how governments can adopt it. Superb. So he's probably not the best one to listen to right away if you're a newbie, but if you're interested in macroeconomics, he's good. But Jordan and I, we keep it relevant, we keep it real, and it would be great to have you on board.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, please go and check out the Crypto Standard podcast. And like many just entering this world and starting their journey, I think a lot of people are looking for kind of the ABCs. One of the things that I've had requested countless times from my audience is, what can we do to start investing in this way? What other types of assets are out there? People are more hungry than ever to find a way to create their own economy so that they can become financially independent, financially free. So we're going to be looking at having more conversations like this on the podcast, but we're also going to be looking to expand into other areas. We're going to be creating community programs to actually take people more through the kind of hand-holding approach to starting these things. A lot of the things I'm going to be joining along the journey with people to do that. So watch this space on that front, and it'd be love to have Jim involved in that as we go forward. But in the meantime, go check out the Crypto Standard podcast. It's a buffet of information. Don't be overwhelmed. It feels overwhelming when you first start, but all of these terms, like anything, they become second nature once you start. And Jim, you said you became curious in 2017, and now you're running a podcast and a leading expert in the field. So it's to me it's an inspiring journey that you've been on, and I hope that people can continue to learn from you through the podcast.
Yeah, we are living in exciting times. The pandemic's shone a light on everything that's going on, and now I believe is a great time to develop your mind, have a look at cryptocurrency and blockchain, and if you decide to get in, we'll help you through it.
Indeed, thank you, Jim. It's been a pleasure having you on here, and I look forward to watching your progress listening to your progress through the podcast. It's a fascinating time to be alive, and I think this is a lot of people are looking for change, and I think this decentralization of these central systems of power, I think this is a fantastic opportunity not only to create social change but also individual change, so everyone can play a part in that. So thank you again, and good night to our audience. If you have further questions about cryptocurrency you'd like us to address on the podcast, this has become one of the most popular topics. Please do put your questions in the comments, and we will time and time again come back to those and look at what we can do to help you on your own journey. So thank you very much again, Jim. Thank you to our audience. And if you haven't subscribed already, just take a moment of your time to join the Pandemic Podcast newsletter at danjgregory.com/pandemic, so we can keep you up to date with all our latest and greatest episodes. Thank you again, Jim, and thank you to our audience, and good night for now.
Bye.